Well, less than 24 hours from the polls opening for these critical midterms, the big question is, what can the Republicans do in these final hours to keep control of the House? For his take, we turn to former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski. Corey joins us by phone. He's also the co-author of a new book coming out in late November titled Trump's Enemies: How the Deep State is Undermining the Presidency. Corey, thanks for being with us.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me today.
Corey, what do you think we, the Republicans, can do in these final hours? Polls are going to be open in less than 24 hours, about 18 hours now. In these critical House races, I'm comfortable that we keep the Senate, probably pick up there. The House still has many of us on the edge of our seats.
Look, the number one thing that people can do is not become complacent going into tomorrow. We've seen a massive amount of early voting already taking place in Texas and Florida and in Georgia, record numbers, which tells me traditionally, that means the Democratic base is energized. They traditionally vote early, and Republicans have historically turned out at greater numbers during Election Day itself. So for anyone who's watching right now, they have to understand what's at stake. What's at stake is giving Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters and Adam Schiff gavels to become the bosses in Congress, to have their agenda put forth and not what the American people want. So over the next day, as you're going to work, as you're talking to your friends, your colleagues, use your social media accounts, use your phone, make sure you're talking to people, and make sure that they show up and vote tomorrow if they haven't done it already. This is just the most important thing you can do, and it's a civic duty that our fathers and grandfathers fought to give us the right to have.
Now, Corey, let's talk about Florida. Two very important races. Gubernatorial race, Republican Ron DeSantis, Democrat Andrew Gillum. We've got Governor Rick Scott running against incumbent Senator Bill Nelson for that Senate seat. Now, the numbers I saw as of this morning, according to the Florida Division of Elections, in returned absentee ballots, identified Republicans are beating Democrats by about 66,000. Dems have a slight lead in in-person early voting. But the big number are those independents and non-party affiliateds. About 500,000 on the absentee ballot side have returned, about 400,000 on the early voting side. What does that tell you? Because the numbers are up and look a little bit better for Republicans than they even did in 2016 when you were chief strategist campaign manager. How do you think those independents and non-party affiliateds break in Florida, Corey?
Well, it's a great question. That is really what this race comes down to. You have to remember, in Florida, we knew that both the Senate race and the gubernatorial race was going to be a battle. And what we saw, what we were against 2 years ago when Donald Trump was on the ballot down there, is the Democrats had outvoted the Republicans in the early voting by about 150,000. We went into Election Day down, and as you know, Donald Trump won the election in Florida by a wide margin. So the good news is Republicans have done a very good job so far in the early voting and, by and large, the absentee ballot voting of hanging closely to the Democrats. But the 18% of the individuals who have self-identified as independents or unenrolled voters, we don't know how they're voting. The real concern is, has the African-American population decided to rally around Gillum? If that's the case, that could be detrimental to Ron DeSantis. Are those independents the same individuals who voted for Donald Trump 2 years ago? And if so, that's going to be a benefit to DeSantis and to Rick Scott. The latest poll I've seen is that this race is neck and neck. Yeah. You have to remember, when Rick Scott won his two races for governor combined, he won by 2.5 points combined.
Yes.
So we know that Florida is an unbelievably competitive state. But President Trump has been down there twice now in the closing days to remind the people of exactly what is at stake. And the people of Florida have a real choice. They can send someone to Washington, D.C. who's going to help the Trump agenda with Rick Scott, or they can send back someone who hasn't done anything to move that agenda forward with Bill Nelson. So I think that people are going to be smart. They want a strong leader in Tallahassee, and they want a strong leader in Washington. And you're going to see two Republicans elected tomorrow in Florida.
I certainly hope so. I want to bring in Dr. Gina Loudon. Gina, you were with Corey, I believe, last night. You were with the president at his rally in Fort Myers last week. I tend to agree with Corey. I think this is going to mirror Rick Scott's wins. It's going to mirror 2016, and we're going to eke it out with DeSantis, and we're going to eke it out with Governor Scott by about 1.5 to 2 points. A win in each. The way I feel, Corey, Gina, is a win is a win is a win. Gina, what did you see on the ground in Fort Myers last week?
exuberance. I mean, people are so excited to support this president, and I think that's the factor that's being left out of a lot of the news media coverage when they say things like that, you know, well, the president's at these rallies, but there's only however many tens of thousands of people at these rallies. That's not going to win an election. These people were already going to vote for him. It's not changing independence. And that narrative, I don't think that's true, because I think that when you take one of those people who in another midterm election, John, may not have chosen to vote because maybe the economy is good and they're feeling comfortable and they don't really see a motivation to get out of their recliner that day or to leave their jobs early or whatever it takes to go and vote. Those people that showed up at that rally, they are not just going to vote, John. They are going to be all over social media like you have never seen before, and they are going to take their friends and their family and go to the polls because they feel a call of duty from this president like no other president has ever called on them for. That's how I think these rallies are making a difference.
Corey, your take on that is the Trump effect. Are these people who come out to see President Trump are very loyal? Is that going to benefit those down ballot candidates?
Well, it has to benefit those candidates. Look, Donald Trump has been very strategic in the places that he has gone over the last 2 weeks and the pace that he has kept. And the reason he has been so strategic is to make sure that we're holding the seats in Tennessee and Arizona and Nevada, where we've had incumbents or members retiring Republicans holding those seats. But look where he's been in West Virginia, in Montana, in Florida multiple times. You know, you look around at his schedule, it has been tenacious. Those people he is calling on to make sure that his supporters aren't just supporting his policies, but are sending him reinforcements to Washington, D.C. to get his agenda to continue to put our country on the right path. I think they're going to turn out. You remember 2 years ago when we woke up on Election Day, the New York Times said he had less than a 2% chance of winning. And here we are 2 years later with the greatest economy we've seen in our lifetimes. His success is contagious, and he needs people to show up and support those other candidates who are going to come to Washington to help him.
Yeah, I agree. Gina, I believe you had a question for Corey.
And to add to Corey's point, I want to emphasize those 4 million people that have jobs now in America, guess what they're going to be doing tomorrow? They're going to be voting because they know if this president doesn't have the House and the Senate, he can't continue his agenda of job creation in this amazing economy. Corey, I wanted to ask you, in terms of the races, how you think they break down, what do you think the final numbers will be if you had to guess? Do we keep the House, and which states do we win?
So this is a great question. This is $1 million question. Look, I think we win in Montana, Missouri, and North Dakota. I think those three are there. I think we win in Indiana. I put those as the races where I think we have the best opportunities. And the reason being is when I look at Trump's election victories in those states, 56% Montana, 56% Missouri, 63% North Dakota, and 56% in Indiana. I think we can win there. I think we can win in West Virginia. It's a much tougher race for us, even though Donald Trump received 68% of the vote in his election. And then Florida, I put as right now a toss-up. I think Rick Scott pulls that out. Donald Trump received 49% of the vote there. Hillary Clinton received 47%. But that's really the president's second home state, the state of Florida. So I see us being very successful in those states. That gives us a +4. If you ask me right now, maybe a +5. That's a very aggressive model. But that's what I like in the Senate. As it relates to the House, our majorities are going to be smaller. There's no question about it. I don't think you're going to see a 63-seat loss like you did in Barack Obama's first term or 54 seats like you did in Bill Clinton's first term. I think what we're going to see is we're going to actually gain 2 seats in Minnesota, which means we have a net positive of 25 seats. I think we ultimately lose anywhere between 18 and 20 seats. And so you're going to see a Republican majority that has between 5 and 7 seat majority for the Republicans after tomorrow night.
So, Corey, you're calling right now as we sit here. Your prediction is we keep the House by a slim margin.
It's going to be very slim. And look, the other thing that no one has talked about in this election is how competitive some of these governor's races are. You know, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Georgia, Ohio, Florida, obviously we just talked about. But we've got races where Republicans are very likely to lose. And I'm talking about states like Michigan and Illinois. You know, we've got a toss-up in Kansas right now. South Dakota is a race where we have historically done very well, and our candidate there is not doing as well as we had hoped. So I think at the end of the night, tomorrow night, when we look back, we're going to see increased majorities in the U.S. Senate. We're going to see a much smaller majority in the House. but we really have to watch those governor's races because with redistricting coming up and the opportunity for Democrats to be winning in states where they shouldn't be, that should be very alarming and should make sure that people aren't complacent, because if Democrats win in states like Georgia and Florida, it's a very difficult thing going into the president's reelection campaign.
Corey,
I have a question.
Go ahead,
What's going
Gina,
to happen
sorry.
in Arizona? Yeah, what's going to happen in Arizona? And one more question. What role does the president's emphasis on these migrant caravans and illegal immigration, what role will that play in Arizona, since crime amongst illegals is so much higher in the state of Arizona?
Look, in Arizona, I think Donald Trump is actually going to he's a huge value there, because the people of Arizona have seen firsthand what illegal immigration has done to their state with the overrunning of services, specifically county services, city services. And so Martha McSally is going to win in that Senate seat. And the reason, by and large, she's going to win is not only because of her support for Donald Trump and to stop the caravan, but Doug Ducey, who is running for re-election as the governor of Arizona, is up about 8 or 9 points. And you're not going to see the kind of crossover vote that's going to be voting for the Republican governor and the Democrat U.S. Senate candidate. So I think Doug Ducey's popularity in the state, him cruising to his second term, is going to help Martha McSally. That plus the illegal immigration issue, where Arizona has been on the front lines of, is going to ensure that Martha McSally is the next Republican U.S. Senator from Arizona.
All right, Corey, before I let you go, I want to talk about your new book. It's coming out November 27th, just a few weeks. It's titled Trump's Enemies, How the Deep State is Undermining the Presidency. It's a topic I'm incredibly interested in. Corey, tell me a bit about the book.
Well, this book is really an account from myself and Dave Bossie, and what we do is we outline for the reader exactly who the enemies of this administration have been. Some of those individuals who have served inside the White House, some of the bureaucrats who continue to serve in our government, the members over at the Justice Department, whether it's the FBI and some names that you will know. Of course, Jim Comey and Andy McCabe, you know those names.
Sure.
But we also talk about the role that the media has had. And what this book is, which is very special, it's the only book in the first 2 years of the administration that President Trump sat down for and gave a lengthy, on-the-record interview. He gave it over an hour long. We recorded it verbatim. It's published, and the DOJ and all of those people, as well as the members of the media, members of his staff, and what has been written about previously, we gave the president the opportunity to go directly to the American people and tell them what he thinks about that. We put it in the book verbatim, and I hope people will get it.
I hope they do as well. Corey, would love to have you and Dave back on the show as soon as the book is released. Thanks very much for being here. Corey Lewandowski.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more breaking news coverage, exclusive interviews, and great videos, click over here to our YouTube channel and subscribe. And don't forget to download the free Newsmax TV app. Newsmax TV, it's real news for real people.